we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We have a wonderful webinar topic to cover. Who doesn't love jams and jellies? And wow, we have so much fun with Meagen Baldy. She's an amazingly gifted Indian country educator, and she's here with us today. We initially were going to have Red Lake Nation Foods join us, and due to some changes within their program, they were not able to join us today, but we do look forward to hosting them soon. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and let's see, have everybody watch this 2-minute, 38-second little video. It's a call to participate in our Indian country surveys that relate to COVID impacts on tribal food systems. So I'll go ahead and run that. Hey everybody, Keir Johnson-Ray is here with Intertribal Agriculture Council. I'd like to talk about participating in IAC's surveys. Help us shape Indian Ag's COVID-19 responses. Go to indianag.org/resilient. You'll find 4 surveys covering tribal producers, tribal and community leaders, American Indian Foods participants, community grocers, food hubs, and cooperatives. The preliminary results are indicating tremendous impacts across Indian country's ag sectors as a result of COVID-19. We're noticing issues in workforce reduction, sales, supply chain, and loss of cash from food, agriculture, and natural resource management. Go to indianag.org/resilient to bring light to your community's needs. Scroll down to the Share Your Stories section. If you're involved in our virtual Intertribal Food Summit, we're asking that you take our 5-minute survey as part of your participation in the summit. Thank you. All right, well, sorry about that. Sounds like the sound might have cut off on some of that. But regardless, we really do hope that you participate in one of our surveys. Provides critical information to our work as well as to the work of our partners and helping to shape, COVID-19 responses. Again, I want to just introduce myself. Keir Johnson-Ray with Intertribal Agriculture Council. My colleague Catherine Vinhorn and myself have been working with Meagen Baldy on the development of these food preservation trainings, and we're really grateful to again focus today on jams and jellies. Word on the street is that we're going to be focused on peach jam today, if I'm not mistaken. So again, Meagen Baldy is with the Klamath Trinity Resources Conservation District in Hoopa, California, and is a Hoopa tribal member, lives there within the community, and has worked with us on many fronts. And she's also our Pacific Region board representative for Intertribal Agriculture Council. And so we just appreciate everything she does for Indian country in general, as well as, she's a phenomenal leader within her community, and we draw upon her modeling for a lot of the work that we do in highlighting successes across the country. So Without further ado, I want to turn it over to Ms. Meagen Baldy. Thank you so much for presenting for us today.
Hi guys, Meagen here. Thank you, Kier, for the introduction. Really appreciate the relationship with IEC and being able to work with all of you guys across Indian country. And my passion is food security, and that leads to food sovereignty. And I'm totally thankful that I'm able to meet with different people across the nation and just share the knowledge that I have. I'm from the Klamath Trinity Resource Conservation District. We're a tribal nonprofit here in Hoopa, California. I also am a Hoopa Valley tribal member. And so I'm in my hometown, able to share food sovereignty initiatives with my own community, which is really awesome. I love my job. But I'm also a master food preserver. So I took a course through the UC Cooperative Extension Program. And through that course, I was able to learn how to teach canning and fermenting of foods and dehydrating of foods. So just multifaceted amount of how to save the food that's in your home and how to prolong the shelf life. So right now in our community, and it's probably like this across Indian country, we are like inundated with tons and tons of fruit. One of the fruits that are very plentiful in my community are peaches. And so one thing I wanted to point out was, like, if you're gonna start, doing jams or jellies, especially things like peaches, a lot of farm stands have peaches throughout the country, and it's really, kind of a real easy way to pick up a lug of peaches, very low cost. But if you're gonna be doing jams, when you go to those farm stands or farmers, I would suggest that you ask them for their blemished or their basically lower quality or lower grade peaches. And usually they have those in the back, and they're not gonna, charge a whole lot more as opposed to a lug of just beautiful, non-blemished peaches. The reason being two things: you're gonna save money, but you don't want those beautiful, really nice and firm peaches. You want those peaches that are really kind of getting mushy, kind of not looking so beautiful to do this. So I'm just going to go over a few things, and then I'm going to have my daughter Emily, she's here with me, she's going to switch over so that she can video me, and then you guys can also be go following along. And I'm just wondering if my screen is the screen showing, because the way I'm looking, it's not showing me as the screen. Does everybody see me fine and hear me fine?
Yeah, see you
okay.
Great.
Okay, perfect. So before we switch over, I just wanted to go over some basic things for canning in general. One is your jar. We're going to be using pint jars. This is a pint with the regular mouth, not the wide mouth. So this is your base of your jar, and this is the headspace. This is really important, this headspace right here, is because it's going to call for a certain amount of headspace per whatever you're baking, whether it's jam, jellies, whether it's fish or deer meat. There's going to say an amount of headspace that you need to put. For jams, usually the headspace is basically right up to this line, which is the first, let's see if I can bring it over to the camera. The first line right here, as it starts on that ridge of the top right there, that's a 1/4 inch headspace. And then you go down, you got your 1/2 inch headspace, which is basically center to the beginning line. And that's your 1/2 inch. And then you go back down 3/4 inch, and then your 1 inch headspace. So that's going to be really important when you're looking at your recipes. Each recipe will tell you how much headspace you need. And jams and jellies are basically, you're kind of filling them up to the top. So that's your jar, and you have your lid and your ring. So this lid and ring right here is the ring right here. You can use over and over again, but the lid, it has a one-time seal gasket at the bottom, as you can see. Basically, you're just going to be using that one time, and you want to hear it pop. And then once it's unsealed, you can only use it basically just to store in the fridge. There's not many uses afterwards with the top of these things. So that's your basic makeup of your jar. The next thing that you need as tools, as you can see, this little tool that I showed you when I was holding the lid, has the magnet on the bottom. It also is like a butter knife kind of thing, but it's actually like a good bubbler. And you'll use this to get the air bubbles out of like tomatoes if you're canning whole tomatoes. If you're canning whole peaches, you'll use this to move around inside of whatever you have in your jar to get all the bubbles out, because air kills your product, whatever it is. Air basically kills everything, that and mold. So this is a tool that you'll need when you're doing those things. Another thing that's a vital tool is a measuring cup. You cannot do canning, especially with jams and jellies, because one, if you don't measure right, you can have set failure. Two, if you don't measure right, you can introduce bacteria to your family. So it's really important that you have a really good measuring cup. One good thing about jars, this is my water jar, but they have measuring, this little pint-wide mouth. This actually has a measuring on the side. It's got 1 cup to a half a cup. You can always use those, or just a regular old cup measuring, you know? And so you got to have those things, especially when you're making jams and jellies. But another important tool is your jar lifter. You cannot can without this, especially jams and jellies, because once you have a hot liquid of either peach jam or peach jelly in this jar, this thing becomes a basic bomb. So if you drop this thing while it's full of hot stuff and this thing breaks into a million pieces and it shatters onto you, you're going to get burned. So this thing actually helps it. So you can see I'm just moving it all around, no worry about like anything, right? You need this tool if you're going to can. This is super important. So those are our basic tools that we have. I'm going to switch over to Emily now because I'm going to start the recipe. If you guys have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. And as we go on, we can start at whatever Kier or the rest of the IEC folks would like to do, how people would like to ask questions, go for it. You ready? Okay. So Emily's got me now. I just wanted to go over what being a was drilled in my head about. Basically following a recipe.
It's kind of blurry. Sorry.
Good?
A little bit better, yeah.
Okay, so as a master food preserver, you're told that you must follow a recipe to the T. The biggest reason to following the recipe to the T is that you're not introducing some sort of foodborne illness to your family. This is the ball pectin recipe that came with the pectin that I'm going to be using today. These recipes have been scientifically tested so that if you're using these to the T, you're not going to introduce any type of bacteria or any type of growth into your product, into your jam once it's in here, once you open that up to your family. So each one of them have a step-by-step information on what to do, and a lot of it is there's a ton of sugar in these recipes. So sometimes you might say, Megan, okay, so for today, our peach jam calls for 7.5 cups of sugar. You might say to yourself, Megan, that's a lot of sugar. Can I just do 4 cups? Absolutely not. I mean, it is for different reasons. And that's for one, sugar is your preservative in your jams and jelly. 2, you're making sure that you do not promote a bacteria growth or any type of, bad things that might go into your family's food, right? But also, like, if you don't feel like doing the recipe and you kind of mess around with the amount, you could actually cause set failure. Set failures are like, okay, my peach jam just turned into peach syrup, that kind of thing. So those are 3 critical reasons why you don't want to change up the recipes. There are lower sugar option pectins out there. You can get the Sure Gel low sugar pectin. It comes in like a pink box and it's powdered pectin. You can also get a more like natural option of pectin. It's called Pomona pectin. They have low sugar recipes in that, and you can also go for organic, all the way organic if you want to as well. So that's what's important about following the recipes. You definitely don't want to get your family sick. You definitely want your jam or jelly shelf life to be as long as you can. And the general amount of shelf life that you will have in a jam or jelly is about 2 years. And that's general across the board, whether it's jam, jellies, fish, you know, deer meat or green beans, whatever you're putting in your jar. 2 years shelf life, that's about as much as you can do. I wouldn't recommend going that long anyway. If you're gonna make jams and jellies, you need to eat it. Like, that's the whole point of this all, right? So like for me right now, for our family, we're into this huge, like, berry season's coming on, peach season, fruit season, everything's coming on. Well, all my old jams and jellies basically are gone. And so now so that's kind of the important reason why you want to follow this recipe for the shelf life. And then also, like I said, if you're gonna make peach jam, you don't want peach syrup, unless you want peach syrup too. So like, I like it sometimes when it fails. I'm like, oh, that's all right. We'll just have that for syrup. So it's up to you on that, but make sure you follow the recipes. Like I said, I use the ball pectin, and it's a liquid pectin. It's not a powder pectin, so it comes in these little pouches. And so basically when it calls for the pectin, I pour this whole thing in there, and then that is how I do it. So the recipe, it'll start right here. It's gonna tell you exactly how to follow it. But when you first start out, we're gonna look for the jam side, and then there's the jelly side. And on the jam side, we're gonna look at the peach jam. And it says 4 cups of finely chopped peaches, 7.5 cups of sugar, and 1/4 cup of lemon juice. The lemon juice is important to the pH balance. So everything that you're canning, whether it needs to go into a water bath canner, which we're going to do today, or a pressure canner, depends on the acidic level, the acid level, or the pH in your whatever you're making. So peaches, they're fruit, they are on a higher pH, which you wouldn't think this, but this is how it goes. It's a 4.6 and lower down to a 1.0 is the higher acidic foods. A 4.6 and above are your lower acidic foods, and those require you to transfer them into a pressure cooker. So today we're gonna follow the recipe. So we looked at the jam on this side, the peach, and we're looking at the recipe and how it goes. And the directions say that we are to prepare our water bath canner, which we did. We are to prepare our jars, which are over here. Jars are over here. Right here, our jars, we got them prepared. I bleached, put a little bleach in my water, my soapy water, washed these, and then we're to prepare our lids, which I boiled the lids. All of that's for sanitation. I washed my hands really, really thoroughly. That's what we start with. After we prepared all those things, we're gonna combine the fruit into an egg. This is a bigger than an 8-quart saucepan. As we go further, I'll tell you why I like the bigger ones. And then once that comes to a full rolling boil, which means the peaches and the sugar and the lemon start to boil, and we can see it where it's a boil where it does not go down when we stir. When we use our spoon and we're still rolling boil, we are going to start a timer for 1 minute. After that 1 minute, at that full rolling boil, we're going to add our pectin, which this recipe calls for 2 pouches of the liquid pectin. And then we're going to bring it back up to a rolling boil. And then we are going to start another timer for 1 minute. After that is done, we're going to remove it from the heat and we're going to ladle it into our jars. So let's get started. I have pre-prepped. So, you know, this is like the movie magic of doing a recipe online. And it's like, you know, it looked like I just did this like in 10 seconds, but it actually took about an hour today to do all these peaches. Basically, I got the seed out, got the peeling off, and it says to finely chop. Finely chopping is good, but I find that when you do that, you have like some uneven pieces, so I like to blend it. Okay, Okay, now
Let's see.
that is all blended. Kind of looks like baby food. We're gonna pour. We're gonna measure out our cup. This is a 2-cup measuring cup.
Megan?
Yeah.
Couple things. Yeah, the video's really breaking up on our end. I'm not sure if there's a way to potentially, I don't know, internet. I think it's the internet deal. We're getting most of it, which is great. And then there was a question that came in about the peaches. Are they peeled?
Yes, they're peeled. They're peeled. And then they're also the seed is removed from it. So basically, just a regular peach. I just fold it apart, just like that.
They're popped up now.
And then I just peel it. This is the reason why too. You also want a lower grade peach because they're easier to peel. Does that answer the question?
Yes. And I'll let you know if the video breaks up further. It's okay. We're catching most of it, but yeah, it's been a little spotty.
Yeah, we're on our cellular tower because we don't have Fios Wi-Fi here because we're so rural. So yeah, we get that all the time. But if you can just bear with us and if I'll go as slow as I can, and then also questions if you miss something, that's perfectly fine too. So I'm gonna start mine. 2 cups of peaches.
I don't get to see the questions, I guess.
Of peaches with my sugar.
7 cups.
7.5 sugar. We're gonna mix that really well. Come over on this side.
Okay. Restrict.
So we're gonna mix this really, really good. And the reason being is we want to basically get that sugar mixed into these peaches really fast so you do not burn. I'm getting to do that right now. So you do not burn the peaches. I'm gonna put my lemon juice in. This all goes in as according to the recipe. We're gonna mix really well. And basically, this is your life right here this entire time. We're just gonna mix and mix and mix and stir and make sure we get as much as we can every area of this jam so that nothing burns. So now would be a good time to ask a question if you have it, because I'm just going to be here stirring this.
Oops, sorry.
So I have it on high heat, which is what you want. And then also I have my canner already prepared. This is another thing while we're waiting for this to start to boil, is this is a great canner. This is a stainless steel water bath canner. If you've canned before, or if you've known your grandma or your auntie or those that can, they usually have this old black pot with white speckles all over it. And those are the water bath canners a long time ago. Those are called enamel canners. They're great to use. I mean, they last forever, of course, because everybody still has them in their house, right? They're awesome. I'm not saying they're not, but for me personally, I can't use them. The reason being is because I have a flat top stove, and you're not supposed to use those enamel canners on flat tops. You have to use the stainless steel surface at the bottom, and so that heat will deliver distribute throughout the canner evenly. Enamel canner, they have a ridge at the bottom of them, and it won't distribute the heat properly. So I have it all ready. Every canner that, if you have stainless steel, they have the lid, they have the rack, which is right here, the rack that that comes in there. You need a rack. You can't can without a rack or some sort of barrier in between the jar and the canner. And the reason being is sometimes it will cause a jar to break in a canner. So you need some people even need rags at the bottom of them so that they can their barrier is basically between their canner and their jar.
Megan, a question came in about the peaches. Are you picking the peaches early or ripening them on the tree? Is there any strategy for, the perfect peach to be using there?
Just like I said, when basically I got these peaches from a local farmer. I don't unfortunately have a peach tree. I wish I did. But, it just depends on what you're using your peach for. So like if you're using your peach to eat, you want to pick them when they're nice and firm. If you're using your peaches for like a peach cobbler, you'll want them a little less firm. If you're using them for jam, you want them almost to the point of mushy, like almost to the point of rotting. Like I said, if you're buying from like a local farmer, if you're buying from like a farm stand, and you go in, they usually have like these beautiful lugs of peaches. You can go in there, they're probably like $15 a lug or whatever. But if you ask the farmer or the farm stand if they have any number 2 or number 3 grade peaches or some mushier peaches and that you want to make jam, they'll bring you out some really good peaches. But yeah, you want them to be like really kind of mushy.
Thank you.
So while we're waiting for that to boil, we have our funnel in our jars. This funnel, basically, you can get a kit. It's called canning kit if you want to look it up. Amazon usually has them really good price. They usually come with like a measuring cup. You'll want to find that they come with a debubbler magnetic tool. Definitely need one of these jar lifters, and then a funnel. Funnels are super important, especially when you're doing jams and jellies. Like I said earlier, this stuff gets hot. When fruit hits sugar and they hit heat, they create this intense amount of heat, and it just becomes like lava. And somebody like me, I burn myself quite often. I got a burn right here for making blackberry cobblers. I had a huge burn scar on my hand for making blackberry pies and pulling them out, all the juice hitting. That's all from like the juice and the sugar. Once they get together, they are deadly. Okay, so you want to come back over here? Emily's gonna move you back over here.
Sorry if it's wobbly, it's just really heavy.
So what I was saying earlier, a boil that does not go down when you stir it. As you can see, this is a rolling boil. We're gonna start our minute timer. Once that goes in, you don't really need this tool no more, your spoon. We're gonna switch over to our fancy jelly jam tool, which is a nice scooper and also rests on the side of my pot right here. Again, they're in the recipe. It says it calls for an optional tablespoon of butter. I said earlier, it says 8-quart pot. This is a bigger than an 8-quart. This is like a 12-quart pot. And the reason being is you can see there's peach and sugar and lemon juice is starting to foam up. Once it foams up, if you have a smaller pot and it starts foaming up, it'll go over the pot line and all over your stove, unless you have a miracle butter scoop. If you put that butter scoop in there really fast, it'll just go all the way down, all the foam will go away. My minute's up. So we're gonna take our pectin, we're gonna pour it in, just like that. Squeeze all of our liquid pectin out.
2.
This one calls for 2. We're gonna bring it back up to a rolling boil. So some of you might be asking, Megan, what is the difference between liquid pectin and powder pectin? Well, the difference is this. As you can see, I added my sugar and my fruit together in the beginning. Then I bring it up to a rolling boil. And then I put my pectin in. Well, with a powder pectin, you start with your fruit and your pectin, the powder pectin, in first. You bring that up to a rolling boil, and then you add your sugar. Well, it takes a lot longer for that rolling boil to happen in between that time, so before you start your timer. So now we're already back up to a rolling boil. We're going to start another minute timer. Very important. Do not skip this step. We're going to bring it back up to that minute timer. And as you can see, the boil is not going away when I stir it. So we're going to wait for that minute to go off. As soon as that's off, our jam is done. We're going to ladle into our jars, and then we're going to put them into our canner. Okay. Another important thing is if you're in the kitchen, I don't know if you guys can see it, you gotta have like tennis shoes on, especially when you're making jams and jellies. You don't want sandals on. I learned this the hard way. And I still learned it the hard way because I burnt myself the other day on my foot, but I wasn't doing jams or jelly. I was just doing like food and the grease popped on me. But you want to make sure that you dress properly when you're canning.
Or just cooking in general.
Yeah, cooking in general. Our timer is done. Our minute's over. We're going to turn it off. We're going to put the timer off. So on this recipe, it says once that's done, you skim the foam off. I don't skim the foam off. The foam is good. It tastes great. It makes your jar look a little like it has foam on the top. To me, that's fine. I don't mind that. Foam is good. So you can do that, or you don't have to, whatever you want. But
Whatever you prefer.
Whatever you prefer. I just wait for it kind of to start going down out of the boil, and then I'll start ladling them into my jar. I'm gonna get a hot pad real quick. So one great thing about this tool, so you can look for it. You can look for like a jam scoop or a scooper, and it's awesome. But I want you guys to look at this right here. You see how it's sheeting? We call that sheeting off of the spoon right there. That means our jam is going to set. That is a good way to check right there. If that's something you're like, oh, I don't know if it's gonna set. You can see how it's sheeting off right there. That jam is gonna set, and it's gonna set firm.
It smells good.
Okay, so again, as it said, a 1/4 inch headspace. I'm gonna go way up to the top. It's gonna ladle it in. That beautiful orangeness. So I basically can hide it out to what it needs to be. You can actually order, it's called a headspace measuring. Okay, that is the right spot. So if there are comments, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ladle this in, and then I'm going to show you how to clean the rims, and then we're going to put our lids on, and I'll show you guys all that. This funnel is really good too, because if you don't have it, when you're doing jams and jellies, it can get really messy.
How many jars will it make?
Is that a question?
No, it's my question.
Just depends. Every recipe is very dependent. Like sometimes I get like a lot more, and I'm like, oh, cool. And then sometimes I don't get as much as I got the first set. It's just a little, I think it's just like the fruit and the sugar sometimes.
It's weird because you're putting the same amount in every time.
Mm-hmm. It's just finicky. It just does its own thing. You just got to roll with it. Okay, so we have a little left over. I wash my hands, but we have a little left over, And there's two things you can do with that leftover stuff. One, for me, I'm going to be doing more peach jam, so I could actually use it again at a later time. Or you could just put this amount into the fridge and eat it really quick. Either or.
Because it kind of sets on its own.
Yeah, it'll set on its own. And you want to put it in the fridge. You want to eat it up within the fridge like 5 days or so. So, answering the questions, we're going to move on to this part.
I can't really see the questions, so I don't know if it's questions.
Okay, so we need to clean our rim. Jams and jellies, the best thing to use to clean your rim is a wet paper towel. You don't want to use a dry paper towel because it's really sticky. And so the jam and jelly will stick on a dry paper towel. This way you're not. So you just kind of go around the top or the rim of your jam or jelly to get all that excess fruit off so that it does not compromise the seal. So I'm going to take my thing, I'm going to put that on there, get my ring. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it on. Okay. You're looking at my video, right? And you're watching Meagen do this, right? And I'm fingering up this thing and I'm moving it all around with my fingers. Don't do that. It's hot. I have no feeling left in these fingers when it's hot like that. I've pretty much burnt the tips of my fingers off. So don't do that. If you have to, the best thing to do is like take your rag or something and then move it around. Okay? Do that with all of them and get all that excess off.
Gee whiz, shut up.
So I'm gonna go all the way till it meets the point of resistance right there. And then I'm just gonna finger tight it back on. You don't wanna wrench your jar closed for multiple reasons. One is it's a heck of a thing to come off of there. But two, you can promote like to unseal and reseal while this ring is on.
It looks nice.
Mm-hmm.
I know, because I made it.
Mm-hmm. Peach jam, they're also pretty.
Meagen, is now a good time for a question?
Yep, good time.
Can you share a little bit about the story that you've shared in the past about you know, young people taking this up and you know, beginning to market some products to get a little bit extra cash, or you know, just some of the possibilities for, you know, developing a cottage business out of this?
Yeah, so I'll just use an example of my own kids. Like I have 6 kids. My oldest is 20. My second oldest is my only girl. She's 18. And then I have 4 boys. There's a 14-year-old, a 13-year-old, and 2 12-year-olds. They love doing all types of stuff to make money. Especially at farmers market. They love our farmers market. They're out there right now picking blackberries so they can sell a bunch of cobblers. They realize the value and value added. And so for them, they are actually picking blackberries so I can make cobblers so that they can sell those cobblers online, because we made like 30 cobblers yesterday for farmers market and they sold in the first 15 minutes. So they know like, okay, that's a money maker. I'm going to go pick a bunch of berries and make some money. For us in our community, Himalayan blackberry brush is surrounding us. So it's like a free fruit crop. And so we also take through the RCD and through TANF and different programs that I've partnered with, we've taken youth out and about in the community to pick blackberries. And they've picked blackberries and I taught them how to can those blackberries. Well, a lot of those youth have actually sold blackberry jam at farmers market or out in the community because it is a moneymaker. I've had kids tell me like, I'm going to sell all this jam so I can get myself some school shoes, or I'm going to sell this jam so I can get some wrestling shoes, or I'm just going to sell this because I want some extra money. And this is, you know, going to help me out for some extra money. So having that value added product and telling them like, yeah, a blackberry could go for $10 a gallon, right? Or you could take 2 cups or even a cup of those blackberries that are in that gallon, and you can make $6 off of a cobbler. That amount of difference in that value added product is huge. And so those are the things that I think are really valuable for our kids. Even around us right now, there's apples dropping left and right. There's plums dropping left and right from a lot of like old trees that are just not taken care of throughout the valley. And so, you know, it's all free access to food that kids could actually utilize and stuff and make a value added product out of it. Like I was saying earlier, most of the farm stands that I work with, you know, they're like totally cool because they know I do all these projects for food security with giving me a good deal. But if I send a kid in there and tell them that that kid is going to go sell peach jam and they just want all the peaches, I'm going to guarantee you that that farm stand person is going to see the value of that kid wanting to do something and make money as in ag. So those are important things about value added product. Okay, so we're going to switch over to putting our jars into our cannon. So we're just going to load them. I'm already boiling this water. And the reason being is because we're going to process this jam for 10 minutes. So I'm just going to put it in here. I start boiling it while I'm making the jam. And the reason being is because you want it to be nice and ready for you. So I got these in here. I'm going to drop them down. Be very careful when you drop them down with your wrap. All right. You can come over here real quick. A few important tips. Mainly the biggest important thing, and you need to do it, is it needs to cover your tallest jar at least by 1 inch above it, and it's boiling. Another important thing is this says in the recipe right here, it says that we're supposed to pack all of our jams into our jars, and then we are supposed to, right here it says we're supposed to 10 minutes for jams, and then the other is the fruit. We're going to start our timer because it says to bring up to a rolling boil. As you can see, it's rolling and boil in there. One great thing about this canner is I can just look on this glass top and it's ready right there. So I'm going to turn my timer on for 10 minutes because it's boiling. Important tip is there are height or altitude adjustments that you have to do for canning. For me, I don't have to adjust according to my altitude, because we're basically at like 500 feet here. But if you were 1,000 feet to 3,000 feet, you would have to increase it by 5 minutes. If you are 3,000 to 6,000 feet, 10 minutes, 15 for 6,000 to 8,000. Every recipe will have that in there, the altitude amount. So while you're processing, what does processing mean? That, like I was saying earlier, that these recipes have been scientifically tested, that if you boil this jam jelly for the amount of time that it says, that you're going to kill any type of bacteria growth, any type of foodborne illness like E. coli, which is just a fancy word for poop. Basically, if somebody had poop on their hands while they were harvesting those peaches, and then we put it in there, or like I didn't wash my hands and I went to the restroom, that stuff will not be able to withstand that processing time for 10 minutes. And so what you need to do is it needs to boil 10 minutes, just like that. Some people might say, okay, this water is flowing out of this thing. Are you sure I, need to worry about that. Well, some people will be like, oh, it's boiling too fast, or it's not, I don't feel safe, so we'll turn it down, which is okay. As long as it's still rolling boil, that's fine. But if it's, you turn it down and it stops boiling completely, and like say you have 2-3 minutes left on your timer, you have to turn the heat back up, bring back to a rolling boil, and start over the entire 10 minutes. This is very important. So you don't really want to not finish out your processing time at this high level. And so you want to make sure that you're boiling this for 10 minutes for those reasons that I spoke of earlier. Now, let's say you don't have an inch above your jars and it's boiling, but you don't want to lose your time. You could actually have like a pot of hot water boiling next to your canner while you're canning. Okay, I'm gonna switch back over to me. I'm sorry, bear with me. Okay, so we're just gonna wait for those 10 minutes, but while we're waiting, I'm here to answer some questions. As you can see, I'm glowing. This is steam facial going on here from the steaming of the canner.
All right, great. Anybody have any questions for Meagen? This is a great, great time, as she said, to ask any questions, either on Facebook or those of us that have joined through Zoom. Oh, what are some of your favorite jams to bake and consume, Meagen?
I think probably my favorite to make would be the ones like that me and my family gather. So it's not necessarily like one particular fruit. It's basically something that we're doing as a family together. So we gather gooseberries, we gather wild raspberries, we gather wild strawberries, and we gather huckleberries. We gather black caps too sometimes, but when we go out into the woods, it's like a family event. Like we get together, we're like, okay, we're gonna go gather today. And those memories that you get as a family and that you're making together, that's super important to me and in the whole process, because one, I want my kids to love their valley. I want them to love their indigenous foods, but I also want them to love the journey of it all. You know, they're out there, they're enjoying the outdoors just as much as I am. We're hiking around in the woods and gathering those berries so that we can make jams later. And then once I open a jar of that jam or that jelly, it will take me back to that memory. That's a connection to food that I think that is super important. Even the same like today, like I'm gonna open this peach jam and eat it, and I'm gonna remember this event that we did through IAC. So those are kind of, I guess, would be my favorite. Is just basically definitely the ones I do with my family.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So yes, there is a remedy. I was just pulling up these questions. There is a remedy that if your jams or jellies don't set, you can redo this process. So like if you're trying to, let me see if they have it on here. So like if you're trying to like, okay, it did not set, what can I do? It doesn't have it on here. But sometimes you can see, you'll find a recipe that says like how to fix a batch that's turned into syrup but didn't set. And a lot of the times, most 90% of the times at those recipes, you will pour all of that liquid back into your pot. That's your 8-quart pot or that pot that you did your jam and jelly in. And then you would take like a spoonful, like a tablespoon pectin, and you would add it in. And then, like I said, that sheets to a good level that you feel like it will set. And then if not, you can add 1 more tablespoon of the pectin in it. Anybody else? Well, if there's no more questions or comments, I'm just going to be waiting here with this canner. But I'd like to turn back on my air conditioning so I can cool down a little bit if we don't have any more questions.
Great. Was your thought, Meagen, that we would stay on with you to reach the end of the process there, or do you feel like this is a good stopping point?
It's up to you guys. We got like, I think that we got like 8 minutes or maybe 7 minutes left on the timer. So like, I'm cool. Like I'm just going to be sitting here and we can answer questions. That would be perfect.
Okay. For those that have joined us maybe and not been exposed to the work of the KPRCD, do you want to share a little bit about your efforts and where your food preservation activities kind of fit into a larger bunch of curriculum that you offer to your community there?
Yeah, so like food security is super important. I think that a lot of us across Indian country and across even our own home in our backyard have realized the importance of food security through this coronavirus. We've been working here in Hoopa. I've been with the RCD for 7 years, and food security has been a passion of mine since we're starting work here. I didn't really know what it meant when I first started on, and so when I first started with the RCD, I was part of the CSA program called Veggie Club, and I would help put these vegetable bags together. We got with the local tribal TANF office and we talked about, their clients accessing those vegetable bags and they would pay for them. And so at the beginning of it, like we had like 80 bags and then people weren't picking up. And so we ended up giving out like over the year, we ended up going from 80 to 6 bags per week of clients picking up. And I was like, well, why the heck are people not picking this stuff up? And then I was like, well, people might forget. Maybe their transportation is hard for them to get up here on Wednesdays. Or maybe they are just like me and do not know what the heck to do with kale. And so that was kind of like my first introduction to kale. Back then I was working with these farmers, which, they would drop off this beautiful produce and it was really like fresh picked that day. And it was from Hoopa or Willow Creek, nothing more than 15 miles from our valley. And, it was beautiful. And it was year round that we did this CSA program. And I was like, well, they're probably like me. Like, I didn't know what to do with kale. And it was really cool. The person at the time was like, the person at the time, I'm gonna turn that off. The person at the time, she was like, oh, just do like kale and garlic or kale chips. And so I like tried it and I was like, ew. And it was not something pleasing to my palate because I wasn't used to eating kale. So I was like, what the heck? Why would she tell me to try that? So I took that kale and I started throwing it in tacos and throwing it in spaghetti and just throwing it in the food that we ate at home, like stir fry and stuff like that. And it wasn't bad. It was like actually pretty good. So I was like, I bet you that the people in our community just don't know what it is for one and what to do with it. And so I just started doing these like cooking classes and teaching people like, this is how you eat with the season. I've always been a cook. My dad and our family, like we have 8 kids. And so like I'm the oldest daughter. I have an older brother than me. We basically, when I was 8 years old, I started cooking in a home and cooking for my brothers and sisters and stuff to make sure that they had food and stuff. And so like, I've always cooked my entire life. It's never been a time where I haven't cooked. And so I just started thinking like, okay, well, to get this stuff in people's diet, let's just add to what they're already doing. I don't know about you, but my family likes to have tacos at least once a week. I don't know about you, but I know my family likes to eat like stir fry, like at least every 2 weeks. And so I started adding these things into what we were already eating and then teaching people how to do the same things. And with, you know, things like this, I've always done canning. So like we're fishermen and we're gatherers. And so, you know, we've smoked canned fish forever. And so we've kippered salmon, and, you know, we also gather berries and make jams and jelly. So had that concept of canning, but to teach it safely, I took on this course and then started teaching it, because not only do we want to promote the eating of local foods, but we want to also promote the preservation of local foods, right? So, you know, the biggest waste in America right now is food. We waste so much food. And, you know, I want to kind of, for me, myself personally, I have 6 kids, like I said. Wasting food to me is not a very good, effective thing for my dollar. Like, we buy food or we're growing food, it needs to be eaten. So like saving food and showing people how to save food is important. So I wanted to take on this course, the Master Food Preserver course, to start teaching people, like, not only are we eating it with the seasons, but we're preserving it. So taking on those courses through the RCD, it's basically, I'm blessed, so blessed to have the job that I have, because it actually, my passion is food. I love food, for one. I love to eat it. I love to grow it. I love to raise it. I love all that. But, you know, I want to share that passion to my community. And so through the RCD, we have a community garden. And, you know, it was hard to get the community involved, but the youth were not very hard to get involved. So it's teaching youth how to seed their own food, how to grow their own food, and how to cook their own food at the community garden before all this coronavirus. It's a really awesome program. I've actually had kids that I've seen in Head Start all the way up to 8th grade, you know, all the way up to seniors in high school that have been at the garden over these past, you know, 5 to 6 years that I've worked over there. You know, that you know, they all consider the community garden theirs, because they've been there throughout their years of school all the time and enjoying all the stuff that we do there. We do farmers market. Yeah.
You got some questions coming in. I wanted to just relating to the Master Food Preserver program that you just touched on. The questions are, how did you learn about it, and what did you have to do to become certified? And then what do you would you recommend others go through this program?
Yeah, well, it depends on what you want to do. So like if you want to teach like this kind of stuff in your community with people in your community, I would recommend taking that Master Food Preserver course, because it goes over the food safety component. If you're just brand new at canning and you want to learn how to can, there's no better course to do than, like, say this is something you want to do, but you're not really into teaching. Maybe you could be a sous chef for another Master Food Preserver, or maybe you can just, you know, participate at booths or something with other Master Food Preserver. But you really just want to do it for your own family. You want to take a course that covers, you know, a wide range of food preservation. I would take that. But if it's what you call it, you know, something you just want to learn how to can a few things, I would just recommend, like, I know on my page, Cooking Out in Indian Country, we have a ton of canning stuff on there. I'm always giving live canning classes. If that's something that you might just want to do that. So it just depends on what you want to do it for.
Thank you. And then somebody else had a clarifying question again about the peaches. And I think this has been answered already, but just to make sure that this person understands. So you didn't need to blanch the peaches to peel them, correct? It was just they were so ripe that you were able to just kind of, like, you know, pull the skins off that way?
Yeah, so like peaches, they will slip the skin if you boil them. But, you know, you're kind of adding an extra step into it where you're dealing with a hot peach. So you don't really need to do that. I just recommend, if you're going to do peach jam, that you get ripe peaches that just peel right off.
Okay. Thank you. That's the questions as of now that have come in.
Okay. So I'm going to pull these out if you guys want to watch. I'm live. Okay. So I lost my assistant, so I'm gonna bring you guys. So I'm just gonna take them out and see. Do not tip it. Just move it into wherever you're gonna set it and just set it down slowly. It's like you're like a robot. If you tip, you could actually end up getting jam in between your seal and your jar, and you don't want to do that. And then like say like, oh, like there is a ton of water. Oh, sorry. Let me go this way. There's a ton of water left on my jars. What do? Just leave it there, because if you don't, you could actually compromise the seal from tipping. You don't want to touch the top of your jars right there with your hands, so that they basically seal kind of funny. So you want to just kind of leave it alone.
You got it.
So basically they're all done. You're gonna leave this sitting here for like till tomorrow. Do we have any more questions? We heard one pop. You can bring them over and see if you can hear them pop.
If you don't hear them pop, is that a bad thing?
Yeah, you want to keep your eye on it, like throughout the day. You'll want to walk by and see if it pops. You can see, like, you can see that bubble on the top of that right there. You see that? If you, maybe you didn't work on and you didn't hear it pop, but you still see that bubble right there. And let's say it's like way long time, like 2 hours later, you're going to want to put that jar that did not, you can see that bubble, into your refrigerator.
Hey, Sam. That one's done, right?
Yep, that one's sealed.
It does have a bubble on it.
Just got a nice comment just from someone, Caitlin Walsh, sharing that she's just really appreciative of hearing about your work, Meagen, and your passion for food sovereignty. And she just said that this video is really helping to make canning seem much more accessible.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people's like misconception about canning, is that it's like hard or scary. As you can see, we've been doing this and I've been talking to you guys the entire time within the hour, and we got a whole set of jam done. And so it's really not that hard. It just basically, it's like with anything, with any recipe, following the directions is really key and important.
Are there any other questions or comments for Meagen at this time?
Oh,
One popped.
that one's loud. We're getting shot at.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any more and you don't have any more things that you would like me to answer, Kira, I definitely appreciate all you guys for joining in with us.
People are just sharing their appreciation, Meagen. We thank you so much. It's always a wonderful time with you, and yeah, your expertise is just so important to you know, our trainings and activities around food preservation. So thank you so much. And yeah, we had a wonderful turnout. Facebook Live had some great participation as well. So we just thank everybody for joining. And you know, if you have any questions or anything, Meagen, are you okay with let's see, email being shared?
Yeah, no, not a problem. Share away.
Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and make sure that Meagen's email makes it into the chat box here, and do a final round. Any other comments or questions before we sign off for the day? Alrighty, I think that's it. So thank you again so much, and have a good rest of your day, everybody. Take care.
You too. See you guys.
See ya.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.